when we're doing back training, our arm path is what's gonna dictate whether we get traps or lats. When we're training our traps, we generally want a higher elbow path so that we can fully retract our scapula. When we have a lower elbow path, that generally biases the lats. As a general rule of thumb, depending on what your shoulder can do in terms of its mobility. For our trap training workout today, we're gonna do 4 primary movements. One of them is gonna be a chest supported row. We're doing a chest supported row because if we do a bent over row, where the chest is not supported by an external object, then we have to rely on our spine to not flex, which makes it increasingly difficult to maintain tension in our traps. So in other words, you cannot take your traps to close proximity to failure in a bent over row because the spine is the limiting factor. Stability is the enemy when we're trying to train for muscle development. So when we're doing a chest supported row like this, again, we're gonna keep our spine fixed on this pad. That will allow for us to fully open up the shoulder blades and fully retract the shoulder blades. If I didn't have this pad to support me, then eventually as the set goes on, my spine would begin to flex, which would inhibit how well I can actually train the traps relative to the spine flexors and extensors. And so again, we're using the chest supported row so that we can more effectively open up our scapula and pull back our scapula without the spine limiting us. We're gonna be using wrist straps here as well so that our grip doesn't give out, because we're trying to train our traps and not our grip when we're doing an exercise like this. So again, the benefit of doing a chest supported row is that we don't have to rely on our spine stability where our spine's gonna flex as a form of compensation. I am able to more effectively round my scapula, open my scapula around the pad, which is gonna emphasize the stretched position. I also had my hands in this orientation so that my elbow path is higher, and that forces me to get more scapula engagement, as opposed to if I go lower, I'm generally gonna bias the lats. And so again, that doesn't mean bent over rows are bad, it just means that they're different. And different being that they rely on the spine a lot more and makes it harder to take the traps to close proximity to failure. And a chest supported row machine like this, or doing a prone row with dumbbells, is a good alternative to address that weak point. So just like with rowing, the elbow path on pull downs is gonna dictate whether we get traps or lats. So this goes for both horizontal rowing and vertical pull-ups and pull downs. The elbow path we did on the chest supported row is to bias the upper back as opposed to the lats with a lower elbow path. And again, for lat pull downs, it's the same. The way that you lean back in conjunction with which handle you use, it's what's gonna dictate which tissue is getting the specific bias you're providing it. So using a mag grip like this, we're gonna be doing a trap pull down where we're leaned back a little bit, pulling to our chest with the elbows flared. If I have the elbows tucked and I sit a little bit more upright, that is going to create a little bit more bias to the lats as opposed to bias to the traps. And so again, the purpose of doing the pull down is to train tissue in a vertical plane of motion. And so leaning back a little bit is going to allow for that wider elbow path to train the traps in the vertical plane as opposed to the horizontal plane that you would typically do with any type of rowing variation. And so again, elbow path is everything. We're focusing on the scapula fully retracting and fully protracting, just like we did with the chest supported row. And so again, regardless of the modality you're using, whether it's a pull down, whether it's a pull up, whether you're rowing with a machine like we did previously, whether you're rowing with a barbell, whether you're rowing with a dumbbell, whether you're rowing on a cable, the elbow path during any pulling compound movement is what's going to dictate whether you get traps with the elbows more flared or lats, generally speaking, with the elbows tucked. Again, there's a couple different variables that go into this. The modality you're using, what tool you're using for your exercise, your mobility, as well as your bone structure, how long your arms are going to dictate that. So again, the elbow path is going to be the same for both traps, for trap training, whether you're doing a pull down or a row variation. So to expand on our trap training, we did both a horizontal trap row as well as a vertical trap pull down. The other component of developing our upper back would be through rear delt flies, which would be horizontal abduction of the shoulder, where we're trying to target all of this tissue as we bring our arm out to our side. This would be an isolation exercise where the elbow is not moving, and we're isolating our traps and rear delts at the shoulders to contrast the rows and the pull downs that would be viewed as compound exercises, where we're compounding the elbow with the shoulder to perform the exercise to recruit the traps. When we're doing rear delt flies, we can do them with dumbbells bent over, or we can do them with a cable, and a cable is my preference. What we're gonna do is have ourselves where our arm is up in line with our shoulder, and we are simply going to reach outwards as far as I can. So my right arm is reaching to you guys as you watch, and my left arm is reaching over to the machine this way. I am not necessarily cueing myself to go backwards, although at the end of the set, you're gonna be just pulling the cable apart as best you can. So initially, we are pulling the arm outward to bias the rear delt, and then as the rear delt fails, we're gonna focus on bringing our arm behind us to squeeze the juice that's left in the upper back and the rear delt. Think about wringing the towel out with water. We're gonna make our rear delts do most of the work first, and then we're gonna let the traps get recruited to squeeze the rest out of the set. So again, the rear delt fly is an isolated exercise for the rear delts as well as the traps. We could do this bent over with dumbbells as well, and it would be the same objective, just a different tool to accomplish that. And again, when we're doing this, we're cueing ourselves to reach outward as far as we can so that we can target the rear delt over the traps. As the rear delt began to fail, I begin reaching backwards as far as I can so that I could start retracting my scapula as opposed to just abducting my shoulder. And so again, we leverage the traps here to squeeze as much as we can out of the rear delts, because the rear delts are gonna complement how well our traps look as we work them and develop them over the course of a period of time. We're gonna finish with scapula cars next, a variation of standard shrugs, and we're gonna top off our trap training with those. To finish off our trap training, we're gonna be doing a traditional shrug, where our elbow's straight and we're simply elevating our scapula and depressing our scapula. But there's more to our scapula than just elevation and depression. We're gonna be doing a variation of a scapula car, a controlled articular rotation, where we are taking our scapula through elevation, retraction, depression, and protraction, and we're gonna be doing a shrug as a loaded scapula car. We're gonna do one set here until we feel like we can't actually keep our elbows straight and achieve full elevation. And again, we're doing this as a finisher for our trap training after the chest supported row, after the trap pull down where we talked about elbow path, as well as rear delt flies. So again, that's just a different variation of a standard shrug that people would do, because when we're doing a standard shrug, all we're really focused on is that up and down motion, which isn't inherently bad. But there's more to our traps and our scapula, our shoulder blade, than just the up and down motion. So we ultimately took the shoulder blade through more range of motion than we typically would on a standard shrug. So the idea is that we can recruit more tissue, different tissue, that wouldn't otherwise be getting that stimulus had we done just a standard shrug. So again, for our trap training today, we did a variation of a chest supported row where we don't have to rely on our spine to stay in a neutral position. Where we're doing a chest supported row, we'll often see the spine give out before the traps or the lats actually do. We did a T-bar row, a chest supported T-bar row as our variation for that today. But you could do the same thing on a dumbbell bench and do a chest supported row here as well. But again, with rowing and pull downs, the elbow path is what dictates whether we get traps or whether we get lats. And so regardless of what modality you use, the elbow path is going to dictate everything. After we did the pull down and the rows, we did rear delt flies where we did isolation of the shoulder in abduction and recruited the rear delt and the traps to work together for that. And then we finished with our trap scapula shrug, our scapula car. And that pretty much does it in terms of checking all your boxes off for trap training so that there's no stone unturned and you can have complete trap development for your workout. Thank you so much for watching the Bodybuilding Not Bodybreaking YouTube channel. If you found it helpful, drop a comment, like, subscribe, share it with a friend or family. That stuff really helps us in expanding our reach to popularizing this training approach, because we know there just isn't a better way to do things. If you have interest in diving deeper into the stuff you just watched, feel free to join our school community. On our school community, we have a lot of additional content. We have an exercise library that has over 200 different movement options. We have programs. We have additional videos that are concepts, lectures, and rants to give you guys a deeper understanding as to how and why we do things. We also have a discussion board where you can get direct access to coaching feedback from me personally. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok for additional updates for when we post new content. Thank you again for watching, and we hope it was of use to you.